As global concern grows over the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, all eyes are on whether a ceasefire agreement can be reached soon. Israel has announced its acceptance of the latest proposal put forward by US envoy Steve Witkoff, while Washington awaits an official response from Hamas. The proposed deal includes a 60-day ceasefire and the release of 28 Israeli detainees in exchange for 1,236 Palestinians. Could Witkoff's new proposal be the breakthrough needed to move closer to peace? This question and many more will be asked here on In Depth, so stay tuned. Hamas recently announced it is still consulting with Palestinian factions on the US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff's ceasefire proposal for Gaza received through mediators. According to Egypt Today, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine urged Hamas to work closely with Arab mediators to reach an agreement to halt the aggression in the Gaza Strip, even for 60 days. High hopes surround Witkoff's proposal after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted it, while Hamas said it will study it responsibly. The White House expressed optimism, saying the plan could help bridge remaining gaps and lead to a ceasefire and detainee exchange soon. If Hamas approves, US President Donald Trump is expected to explain the details of the deal. To help us analyse the current situation, we're joined by Al-Khalid Maher Al-Numeira, spokesperson for Fatah, and from Cairo by Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist. Thank you both for joining us here on In Depth. Dr. Maher, let's start off with you. Hamas announced it is still holding consultations with the Palestinian factions over the recent ceasefire proposal it received from Witkoff. What are your expectations for Hamas's response, and what might the hurdles be that may prevent the acceptance of this proposal?
Good afternoon to you and to your audiences and your kind guests. We are in fact, since the announcement of the genocidal war, that was an official name to call upon an immediate ceasefire and to invade the Palestinian people more of the horrors and appalling situation. We are wishing for the intervention of Witkoff to have some sort of a fast, immediate, comprehensive ceasefire agreement and the delivery of the humanitarian aid. And whoever is going to decide are the two negotiators, Witkoff and Hamas representative, through the Arab mediators that they are playing in a very positive role, on top of which the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed, if we can get your opinion on this. Witkoff has affirmed repeatedly that Trump is committed to reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. In your view, how dedicated really is Trump's administration to achieving a real ceasefire deal in Gaza?
Thank you, Rehan, for having me. Greetings to you and to your dear guests. I think that President Trump and the Trump administration are interested in achieving a ceasefire in order to primarily secure the release of more detainees from Hamas's captivity. And not necessarily, the goal is not necessarily to definitively end the war or end the Israeli aggression against Gaza. And that is evident from the details of Mr. Witkoff's proposal. A temporary ceasefire, a truce basically that should last about 60 days, the release of about half of the living detainees and about half also, or more than half of the dead detainees as well, a total of 38. If I'm not mistaken, 10 alive detainees and 18 corpses, and also the facilitation of the entry and distribution of aid through the UN and humanitarian agencies, and also the redeployment of Israeli forces in some sectors to the front lines or the combat lines of that existed before the abrogation of the first ceasefire. And there is a vague provision that says that the Trump administration or the United States will work on maintaining a framework to end the war. However, there is no definitive or clear timeline for the cessation of hostilities and the full withdrawal of the army of occupation from the Gaza Strip. So it seems very troubling. It seems to be a proposal that is designed to cater to Israeli interests and to ensure that Israel reserves the right to resume the war whenever it sees fit. And of course, this is quite problematic. However, this does not mean that the Palestinians should reject the ceasefire proposal. Any ceasefire, even if temporary, is better than nothing, is better than the resumption of hostilities and the continuation of the bloodbath inside the Gaza Strip, because the humanitarian situation is dire, and now the well-being and fulfilling the livelihood needs of the people of Gaza should be everyone's top priority, including, of course, the Palestinian factions.
So your belief here is basically that the Trump administration is not necessarily seeking a permanent ceasefire, but rather, temporary band-aids for the situation.
Yes. They would not mind if this turns into a permanent ceasefire. However, if they see that the Israelis still have an interest, or Netanyahu has an interest or a desire even to resume this war after the ceasefire, they will not do much to prevent them, to be honest. The track record of the United States, whether the Biden administration or the Trump administration, of applying pressure on the Israelis is abysmal, because the application of pressure is near non-existent. So that's the problem. We do not have any guarantees that this will turn into a permanent ceasefire and a full evacuation of the Gaza Strip from Israeli forces.
Okay, Dr. Meher, could you tell us, Witkoff's new proposal serves as a framework for a phased peace process, or is it just limited to temporary de-escalation? Dr. Mohammed, you heard him talking about the idea of this being kind of vague, that the possibility of a permanent ceasefire may not necessarily be very clear in this framework or this negotiation.
In the total, we need to have the fruits of these negotiations, and through the negotiations should be clear which is the comprehensive ceasefire. If you took a timetable truce without having any commitment to have a full halt of the genocidal war against the Palestinian people, that require the American administration as the most control power in the whole world and the most allied to Israel that support Israel militarily and financially. So it is required from the American intervention that we are, even though we are welcomed to, but this should lead to a permanent ceasefire and to stop the bloodshed against the Palestinian people. And even the airstrikes do not differentiate between a citizen and a resident. So the ultimate prize the Palestinian people in general. So as we hope for the matters to be very clear, to commit the Palestinian people of a comprehensive ceasefire and to move forward for a comprehensive release of the captives and in reach for arrangement in the region for the upcoming phase. And we are in Fatah movement and PLO, the legitimate representative of Palestine, wish to have a full ceasefire and to regain the Palestinian Authority to have full control of all Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the comprehensive withdrawal of the occupation forces from the Strip, and to empower the Palestinian Authority to shoulder its duties through delivering in the humanitarian medical aid and to start in the process of reconstruction and the provision of the international funding through the international convention. As we've noticed, the positive stances adopted by the EU through their stances announced previously condemning the Israeli occupation and denouncing all the crimes committed against the defenseless Palestinian people, particularly the starvation war imposed by the Israeli forces, preventing all the thousands of the trucks that are piled up at the Egyptian side. And we've noticed that one of the 48 Palestinian people searching of the foods in the garbage, as we've seen that tens of the truckloads were dumped in the garbage places. Whether from either these aids were coming in from Turkey, EU, on the brotherly sister countries. This is a matter should for the whole world to denounce and condemn such that targeting humanity, as we are talking about more than 18 months as the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip are exposing a full genocidal war and a full destruction of the Palestinian assets, and nothing left for the Palestinian people. But even if we talk about the assets and properties, that more than 95% were demolished, and the Palestinian people are in dire need of a loaf of bread, as we requested from the American convoy to have more pressure and impose the American influence upon Netanyahu, and in order to save the Palestinian people. And hence this American stance will be recorded when it succeeded pressuring Netanyahu and in reaching a release swap, either Palestinian and the Israelis, and entering a new phase in the Middle East, particularly in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, that they are facing a real and genuine war since October the 7th, 2023.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed, as per the agreement, now Trump's administration will be guaranteeing Israel's compliance with the ceasefire deal, at least that's what they're saying. How can this be achieved considering the current tensions between him and Netanyahu, and considering that Israel completely disregards any form of ceasefire like we've seen in Lebanon?
The problem is that the United States had a very loose and vague way of applying their pledges, because they are a guarantor, just as you mentioned, Rehan, of the ceasefire in Lebanon. And the ceasefire in Lebanon has been ongoing for the past 6 months. And for the past 6 months, on each and every day, Israel has violated this ceasefire, carrying out incursions into Lebanese territories, occupying 5 areas inside southern Lebanon, and bombing targets inside southern Lebanon, and even in Beirut, the capital itself, on many occasions, and killing over 200 Lebanese people since the ceasefire went into effect. So that doesn't look to me like a very good application of a ceasefire. It's more of a unilateral ceasefire or a one-sided ceasefire where one side refrains from engaging in hostilities while the other reserves or preserves the right to carry out military action at any point. So it's a very flawed idea of the concept or rather a distortion of the concept of a ceasefire. Will we see a replication of such a model in Gaza? Probably yes, because the United States does not seem to be very eager to apply substantial pressure on Israel to make them abide by the terms of any agreement that they will come to. So the US is a very bad guarantor of a ceasefire. And the United States was one of the guarantors of the previous ceasefire in Gaza, which was supposed to eventually end the war. The ceasefire went on for about 2 months. Israel did not comply with most of its obligation under the ceasefire agreement, and then went ahead and unilaterally ended the ceasefire and resumed its genocidal war against the Palestinian people in Gaza, killing about 4,000 people, mostly women and children and civilians, since the 18th of March. So the track record of the United States, again, is abysmal. And this perceived tension between Netanyahu and Trump, I do not think that this is something that bears much weight or much importance, because the key differences or the key disagreements between the United States and Israel, or the Netanyahu government and the Trump administration, is actually centered on Iran and the Iranian nuclear program, not on Gaza. I think that the Americans, the only thing they want out of Gaza is a PR stunt where they can secure the release of more detainees so that they can score some sort of propaganda victory, but not really create a pathway or push forward the pathway for an actual peaceful settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. If anything, as things stand, Israel occupies about 40% of the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Around 70% of the Gaza Strip is under evacuation orders. They are attempting to re-evacuate northern Gaza once more. And the problem is, probably even if a ceasefire is reached, Israel will find a way in order to resume hostilities at the end of the day.
So you're not optimistic, basically, about the prospects of the ceasefire?
Yes, I think that the past 19 months have taught us that optimism in this file is a grave sin and a grave misjudgment. I have to be a pessimist until the final moment, until I am proven wrong by concrete actions on the ground, me and others, of course, by the US administration. Otherwise, I have very little faith in any pledges given by Witkoff, Trump, or any other member of his administration.
Okay, Dr. Meher, reports indicate that Hamas has demanded more American guarantees before agreeing to the proposed framework for a ceasefire and the exchange deal. How can these guarantees be provided effectively, given that, the track record, as Dr. Mohammed said, of America being a weak guarantor for ceasefires in general?
Any Palestinian or any territory or a state in a state of war with another rivals war. So it is not only Hamas that wishes guarantees, and even Fatah wishes to have a comprehensive guarantee for a comprehensive ceasefire and the protection of the Palestinian people, as stated by President Abbas throughout all the conventions, such as the latest Arab summit. But if we think about truth and stated that even that for Netanyahu that would be having the right to resume the war again, which is a matter just that we are doubtly having a good faces, and the resumption of the war is still available, and we wish for the American mediator Witkoff to be very clear to abide Netanyahu for a comprehensive ceasefire and the aggression against the Palestinian people, and to halt all the military operation that ignited in the nation as the Palestinian people paid the whole price, as we all see throughout the world. By seeing all these demonstrators throughout Europe and America that supporting the Palestinian people, denouncing the crimes of the Israeli forces as they are war crimes stipulated by the members of the EU, talking about the appalling crimes practiced by Israel, along with the congressmen in America who talked about the crimes committed by the Israeli occupation, using the American and British arms, as we watched throughout the past 24 hours to halt the ties between Barcelona and between the international organizations that have associations with Israel, protecting the resumption of the genocidal war, as we are welcoming this in, and we call upon all the UN and international institutions to break the ties with Israel in a protest against the genocidal war paid by the ultimate price paid by the women and children. So all these demonstrations throughout the world, in particular the United States of America, that imposes the resumption of the Palestinian people, expressing their solidarity with the Palestinian and battered the Palestinian people. Therefore, when President Abu Mazen had requested in the UN General Assembly, the Palestinian people is calling upon an international protection that he realized the resumption of the war that would lead more martyrs, wounded, sick people, as we are now talking about more than 20,000, among which martyrs and wounded people under the rebels. The aggressions is continuing, and the Palestinian people is the only one to pay the price. So we were thinking that through in days or weeks in reaching a full ceasefire and a process of detainees and prisoners swap as soon as possible, that we wish. So the more the war is prolonged, the more casualties will be felt in both sides. So we're talking about more than 60 prisoners fell down during the process of detention. In addition to those who do not know their beloved ones anymore, so we are not able to talk about a very accurate figures that more than 10,000 in the West Bank, and we don't know about the number of the captives in the Gaza, as the whole world witnessed all these crimes framed by the Israeli media even in some prisoners, that the prisoners are exposed by tortures and inhumane practices that are unimaginable. So this means the Israeli media said so.
Mr. Meher, we get the point there, but we're out of time. Dr. Meher and Namhoura, spokesperson for Fatah, and Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist. Thank you both for your insights, and thank you for joining us here on In Depth. This brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews. I'm Mohammed Morsi.